What would you give to have hours back in your day and thousands of dollars back in your budget? It may sound too good to be true, but it isn't. Sourcewell is a trusted partner in public purchasing, and our job is simple. We do the heavy lifting for you to make purchasing easier and more affordable. We can help source your purchases well without having to go through the painful bidding process yourself. And as a cooperative based right here in Minnesota, we're driven by service and the ability to strategically reinvest in Minnesota communities like yours. Learn more about our cooperative purchasing solutions at sourcewell-mn.gov.
From the League of Minnesota Cities, this is City Speak. I'm Luke Fisher, Executive Director and host of this season of the show. This season, we are having honest and open conversations with city leaders discussing the journey to leadership and the moments that help define big career leaps, either new roles, new projects, or big moments. Today I'm joined by Brad Martens. He's the city manager in the city of Shoreview. He's an experienced city manager. He's worked in Winsted, Corcoran, and now in his new role in his new community. Great. So Brad, you joined the city of Shoreview in 2021, right? And you followed correct. Terry Schwarm, a legend by all accounts. Absolutely. In the city manager profession. He was there for 28 years. What's that been like following someone that has that status and that reputation?
Yeah, it's really been a fantastic opportunity. This is the first city manager role I've been able to have where it's been that we're well-established leadership. But it's been challenging. Anytime you also follow someone with that much experience, you know, the train tracks have been laid and the organization is super well functioning. And it's not only Terry, so Mayor Sandy Martin was there for 26 years. And we have some really long-standing department heads too. So
you followed Terry, who had been around for 28 years. How is that different than when you started in Winsted or when you started in Corcoran?
Yeah, significantly so. So Winsted was also my first city administrator gig, so I was totally just figuring it out as I went.
Right.
So that was a great opportunity. In Corcoran, I'd say, you know, a little bit similar ways, it was all of a sudden the city was changing. So Corcoran, when I got there, really functioned as a township form of government. And then it was all of a sudden transitioning to a city. So I was every single of the department head until we grew, and I hired those on as I went. Wow. So as much as that was a huge opportunity to also transition that organization, it's very different than replacing retirements when you're adding new positions. So I'd be hiring and just basically handing over the hat. You're now the public works director, I'm not. You're now the finance director, I'm not. So that was another good opportunity.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I suppose working in a smaller community, and I've got some of those experiences too, you sort of have to be a jack of all trades. And now you're in the city of Shoreview where you've got these experts that you get to partner with every single day. What's that been like, or how has that felt different?
It's a totally different job, I would say. One that I was very thoughtful about, but it's really hard to give up those decision-making abilities. So I really had to focus on, going into all those conversations. And each department to me is the city manager of their own field, right? So I have a city manager of community development, I have a city manager of finance, and really give them the respect they had in finding where you add value. Like I mentioned, my public works director just retired. He was there for 29 years. My community development director has been there for 37. Wow. My finance director has been there for 25 right now. So these are really long-time, talented people in the organization that even if I was the quote-unquote expert in Corcoran, I'm not playing at their level anyway.
So along the way, you get to work with, you rattled off almost 100 years of experience, or maybe a little bit more, and 3 people, right? Not many people have the opportunity to do that in their careers, or have the opportunity probably to learn from folks like that. What has that learning curve been like, coming from a place where you had expertise and you've got yourself established in Corcoran, right? And then now you get to work with people that really understand their field.
Just kind of learning to get out of their way a little bit too. I don't attend the meetings that they're involved in anymore, and all of a sudden I just get the recap of it. Well, by the way, this is happening. So again, it's really about dropping in and trying to find where you can add some value.
So you've been in Shoreview for almost 2 years. What have you done to establish trust and credibility with your department heads, if you're leaning on them more than you have in the past?
I think I really tried for the first 6 months really not to make any changes, just to learn. I think that's kind of 101 when you're entering a new organization. Just try to learn as much as possible. So, understanding their background. I think one of the luckiest things, I guess, just because I have been around the Metro in a couple different capacities. I've been involved with the league. I've been involved with City Managers Association. All of them who reached out to their peers or learned I got the job were able to share experiences with me.
Sure.
So I think I actually came in with some credibility of the peers, which I think goes back to anytime you can help out those around you, it comes back in droves. So that gave me some credibility right off the top that they'd reached out to people that they trusted that vouched for me.
So you mentioned you've got some retirements that have happened, and more retirements possibly that are on the horizon with almost 100 years of experience with those top leaders. What have you been thinking about as you approach organizational transition and organizational change with those department directors and even with your mayor?
Yeah, so like I said earlier, Mayor Sandy Martin was there for 26 years, 13 elections, and that's your leader along with Terry Shrimp for 28 years, and these key department heads. So again, the organization was just moving, and everybody knew the leaders, who they were and what their styles were and everything else. As far as the transitioning goes, for me, it's really honoring the significant dedication and what they've brought to this organization and not pivoting too fast to the future. I think everyone's watching how we're treating the people, especially those at the leadership level. So if we're not honoring all they've done and all they've given before moving forward and just making some changes, I think you're going to get it wrong within the organization.
So then, as you think about what transition looks like, what are you thinking about as you approach that replacement, and as you think about these leadership roles? How do you approach it in a way that honors them, but also sets up the new person to do their own thing and to be their own person and to carve out their own path for the organization?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing I'm doing is really being thoughtful about every single conversation, every single bit of messaging, and I'm choreographing everything. So I think a retirement is so much different than a resignation. Because of that, you have to honor them. They're yes, choosing to leave, but at the top of their game, leaving the organization, and for them, they'll always be Shoreview. Whereas if you're moving to another city, you're resigning, and now I'm choosing to have a different team. So I think that's very different that way. And in Shoreview, for example, we have a policy where we have an advanced retirement notice. So it actually will provide some additional compensation if you give us 6 months notice for retirement. So then, as much as that seems like, thank goodness we have this long time, it goes by in a flash. So the biggest thing I've been trying to implement is really, it's an innovation and improvement framework I've stolen from a book called Home Run Leadership by Dr. Dave Webb, who happens to be a Shoreview resident, so shout out to him. But it really is a way to approach these transitions really matter-of-factly, so you take the emotion out of it. So I'll be sitting down with these department heads, or have, really talk about what's working well with the current structure and team you have. What's just really going well that I should know about, and as well as what isn't working as well as it could. So you've been here a long time. If you could do things all over again, or if you had another 5 years to make some differences, what would you do? And then just using some time to brainstorm how you could improve those areas. So those have kind of been the three questions I've been asking the department heads and working through. So again, it kind of honors what they're doing. They get to talk about what's working well, right? They get to brag. This is what's been working well, and someone should know this. And then, gosh, if I had 5 more years, I would have done this. Or if I had unlimited resources, I would have done this. And then, geez, I think the next person, here's just some ideas that they could have. Again, you're honoring everything. You're getting everything you need to improve, and it's kind of takes the emotion out of it.
And I've heard it described before as like our work in the public sector is interesting in that we're temporary stewards of chairs. We don't own anything, right? When you work for a city, and you got to do all the good that you can while you're in that chair, and then you got to turn it over to somebody else. And I've heard people describe it maybe as a little bit more of a relay race where you're handing off a baton and you are letting the next person run the leg.
Oh, yeah, I like that analogy a lot. I think that's perfect because I know that's how it certainly felt in Corcoran when I left. And yeah, everything's in impermanence, right? We're just temporary, and everything keeps moving after you're gone, even though as much as you think that I'm really important, I've made a big impact. Once you're gone, it kind of moves on without you.
Life keeps going, right?
Life keeps going.
So Brad, thinking about how you've managed transitions in your community and things that you've thought about, if you had a couple pieces of advice that you'd give yourself just a couple of years ago when you started in Shoreview to today, what would those be?
I think certainly understanding how important it is to choreograph every step and every message you make.
Yeah.
Some things from even just a reorg. All these changes have such big impacts that you might not think about internally or even externally. So I think thinking through, okay, the first step is going to be this, the next step is this. At this point, it has to go public, so who needs to know before it goes public? And really, I think I've made decisions in the past where like, oh, well, this is the right thing to do, so I'll just do it. But not thinking through the impact tangentially of those around you. So I think slow down and choreograph every single thing you're doing is really important.
Yeah.
The other part I would say is the honoring.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of work to honor somebody. I can tell you
goodness.
that.
Yes.
I had a council member pass away in my first month in office, longtime council member. Mayor transitioned to retirement after 26 years. City manager to honor after 28 years, and now having public works director and HR director. It takes a lot of effort, but you have to do it, and you have to do it well, and you have to do it authentically. So I think that's something that you can't skip on that either. And then, just the openness and candor with your team.
Yeah.
And I think recognizing that as much as you do the weekly reports or the council reports, walking around and just, management by walking around and seeing somebody stand up and just, hey, how's it going today? And answering those questions and being available.
Yeah.
Again, another thing that takes a lot of time, but I think that's more impactful when someone can stop you in the hall and say, hey, so what's going on with Public Works? And you can look them in the eye and talk to them.
Yeah.
And everyone can overhear your conversation as well.
Well, Brad Martens, you have been just a tremendous guest on our podcast, The City Speak, here today, and I appreciate how reflective you've been about changes that you've encountered in your career and that you're encountering in the city of Shoreview. I really liked that you talked about the importance of thinking about the future while honoring the past. I think that that's an easy takeaway for everyone. To consider about how you can be intentional in your leadership as you approach transitions. The consideration that you've given to organizational change and the pace in which it happens in Shoreview. And finally, the importance of communications. That's something you've always been good at. That's something I've known you for. But I think that is worth emphasizing to all of our listeners, that you can't communicate enough about change and transition in your organization. So Brad, thank you for being here today. Thank you so much for your time and sharing some of your reflections with us.
My absolute pleasure.
That's it for our show today. I want to thank you for listening to City Speak. If you have an idea for an episode, feedback, or want to get in touch, you can connect with us at podcast@lmc.org. Until next time, be well.